Real Time, Bill Maher's show on HBO, is like a petri dish for regressivism. You get to see all the new prototype regressive ideas floated on that show first before they formally hit the market. By now, you're probably familiar with the famous example of Ben Affleck refusing to allow Sam Harris to criticize the doctrine of Islam without being gross and racist.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people, and that's a problem.
Big of you.
But
why are you so hostile about this? It's gross. It's racist.
It's not. But it's so not.
Affleck received positive coverage from regressive media at the time, and lo and behold, labeling ideas you find disagreeable as racist became a preferred tactic of the left. Don't take on the idea. Just give it a label that supposedly justifies its automatic dismissal, and voila. You're a magician of debate, and you can make ideas you don't like disappear. Of course, that strategy isn't guaranteed to win you elections, but it will gain you the applause of Bill's audience, which lies somewhere on the political compass between Karl the Cuck and Joseph Stalin. The late Christopher Hitchens is the last I can remember to call them out as the seals that they are.
That's obviously just your audience, which will clap apparently anything, is frivolous.
I'm just saying.
The audience didn't like argument by finger that time, but that's only because the finger was pointed at them. Pointed elsewhere, an argument by finger will earn wild applause from that crowd. By now, you've probably seen what happened, or at least the viral 2-minute clip from Friday's episode. Show guests included British journalist Piers Morgan and Australian comic Jim Jefferies. Host Bill Maher, toward the end of the show, stated that critics of Hillary must now apologize for arguing she was the worst of two evils because Trump's cabinet includes Hitler-kin Adolf Perry and David DeVos.
Like Hillary Clinton would have a cabinet with Betsy DeVos and fucking Rick Perry.
Bill and Jim also referenced the, quote, Muslim ban, a characterization Piers rightly disputes, before the whole thing gets stirred into a nonsense cocktail.
She wouldn't have a Muslim ban. They wouldn't have a Muslim ban. They wouldn't be feuding with everybody in the world. They wouldn't be doing this shit with Russia. Are you crazy?
Calm down, Bill. There is no Muslim ban. If there was,
fuck off.
Sorry, why don't we...
Fuck off.
Oh, okay.
There's a fucking Muslim ban.
Okay.
He said there was a Muslim ban.
This is the point.
There's a Muslim
This isn't
ban.
talk about the hysteria. I'm talking about 85% of the world's Muslims are allowed into the country.
This is what you do, Piers. You say, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that, he's not going to do all these things. Give him a fucking chance, mate.
And
you know what I mean?
Why not?
Hitler didn't kill the Jews on the first day. He worked up to it.
That is the exact ridiculous, hysterical, over-the-top nonsense.
If
that
people
is,
got
I'm afraid,
hysterical in
making
Germany
people like you
right away,
ridiculous.
then it wouldn't have...
He's not the new Hitler.
You just like that you won The Apprentice and you have a famous friend, mate. That's all you fucking like.
Can I say one thing?
I know
That's all you like.
That's all you like. You're losing your audience.
I'm not losing my audience.
Because you're sounding unpleasant.
Am I
and
losing
you're also not basing...
So to recap Jim's argument, fuck off. My arguments are self-evident. A new Holocaust is coming, an association fallacy and an appeal to popularity, and a stern middle finger exclamation point. It was just next level Affleck, a bunch of extra theatrics, and still nothing of substance. And Jim really nailed Pierce's coffin shut later on Twitter when he accused Piers of paying for Twitter interaction. Sounds like bullshit, but I gave it a test. Ha! That one's funny. Okay. Sweet. What a great deal. Thanks, Piers. Credit where it's due. Jim's got a point there. Subsequently, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling also ripped Piers on Twitter, using her own work of fiction as some kind of evidence for her stance, which makes me want to write a story about an out-of-touch elitist woman who learns to use logic and reason to appeal to people and win elections. But I digress. That 2-minute exchange you see everywhere has been analyzed to death. And you certainly don't need me to tell you that a middle finger from the Chicken Little of the forthcoming Holocaust isn't a compelling argument, or even an argument at all. But there's much more context to this exchange. Useful context, in my opinion, because it illustrates the regressive arguments thrown at Piers, and perhaps what we can expect to see in the future. This was an Affleck moment. And just like the original Affleck moment that woke many of us up to the regressive left 2 years ago, I think this one should too. One of the more telling pieces of the coverage of this episode was all the subtle political name-calling thrown at Piers Morgan. J.K. Rowling burns Trump supporter Piers Morgan bad. J.K. Rowling blasts President Trump defender Piers Morgan in Twitter battle. J.K. Rowling spars with Piers Morgan on Twitter for defending Trump. Trump supporter, Trump defender. One, those labels aren't even accurate. But two, even if they were, are they relevant to this particular debate? The underappreciated part of this episode is at the top of the show, Piers predicted exactly what would happen with pinpoint accuracy.
You know, I didn't think anything could match the hysteria that I've seen in Britain since we left Europe, and I voted to stay in. But this hysteria about these racist, sexist Neanderthals who've seized control of our country. And now I come to Los Angeles, where if you don't say that Trump's the new Hitler, you get tarred, feathered, and dragged to Santa Monica Pier, and you get drowned and beaten to within an inch of your life.
And the SEALs laughed and clapped for that, before later becoming the exact pitchfork mob Piers described. Piers does not support Donald Trump. He said it explicitly several times throughout the episode.
I wouldn't have personally voted for Donald Trump. It's not my politics. I'm not a Republican. I wouldn't have voted for him. I'm not a Republican. I watch your show every week. I agree with almost everything you ever say. Right? That's not my point. My point is the hysteria is not going to get the Democrats back into power. My point is you have to save the outrage for genuinely outrageous things. Otherwise, we all get fed up with the outrage.
At no point in the episode did Piers defend Trump policies as good ideas. He just wanted them accurately characterized for the sake of productive debate. Yet he's still labeled as a Trump supporter and a Trump defender. Why? Well, the answer is this treatment is simply a new flavor of the trend Affleck set. If we label a person or his ideas with a name that makes those ideas unworthy of consideration, we can avoid the hard work of explaining why the ideas are wrong. Harris and Marr are gross and racist, and therefore anything they say about the doctrine of Islam is defeated by default. Morgan is a Trump supporter or a Trump defender, and therefore anything he says is defeated by default. Now that concept isn't necessarily new, but what is new, at least from my perspective, is this trend of creating a political pejorative specific to a person. I need to come up with a good name for that, but what I mean is this. These publications use the terms Trump supporter and Trump defender, not as a way to describe Piers's position or his arguments, but as a quick way of dismissing him without actually considering his ideas. Oh, he's racist, so don't consider his ideas. Oh, he's a Nazi, so don't consider his ideas. And now it's, oh, he's a Trump supporter, so don't consider his ideas. Or even, he's a Trump defender, so don't consider his ideas. I think that's going to be a trend. Keep an eye out for it in media coverage. I never heard the terms Romney supporter or McCain supporter used to discredit someone. That's something new, and I think we're going to see more of it. The other interesting takeaway from this episode is that demanding accuracy is now somehow a conservative position. You might hear Dave Rubin say,
defending my liberal principles has become a conservative position.
If this exchange is any indicator, defending accuracy with the facts is now a conservative position, at least when the facts are at odds with the left-wing narrative. Piers may in fact agree with the rest of the panel that Trump's immigration plans are bad policy. But simply wanting to discuss policy on accurate terms gets him labeled as a Republican.
I'm not a Republican.
Well, you sure sound like
I don't sound like one.
My last takeaway from this episode is it's not just the SEALs in the audience who think Jim destroyed Piers with Nazi talk and a middle finger. And some of these people actually believe they are winning politically as well. Check out fellow panelist Karine Jean-Pierre of MoveOn.org.
The hysteria is not going to get the Democrats back into power. It's going to have the opposite effect.
Working.
It will empower Trump. It's not working.
Yes,
well, not hysteria, but certainly the demonstrations and all that. You know,
marching every time he tweets is not the way to be.
College students
it has
stop
worked
studying,
because
get back out on the streets.
We won the court order last night. It is working. It is working. If it wasn't for what Democrats were doing this week, we would have never heard of Betsy DeVos.
It's working, she says. Never mind the fact that we lost the presidency, that we lost the Senate, that we lost the House, that we only control 16 state governorships, and we're bleeding state legislative seats like a slashed aorta. We are winning. because we got one loony circuit court decision that isn't even final, and because we almost stopped Betsy DeVos, even though she was confirmed anyway. But hey, it was a moral victory. Why do I even watch this show? I swore it off the episode before the election when Bill warned of an impending right-wing coup.
Yeah, he could win the election because, like I said, this is a slow-moving right-wing coup.
By which, of course, he meant a free and fair election and a peaceful transfer of power before, during, and after which the vast majority of the violence came from the losing side. If it's obviously crap, why do I listen to it? Well, mostly because I don't want to become them. That show is insufferable and divorced from reality because, for the most part, it refuses to consider opposing viewpoints seriously. But that refusal is exactly why Ben Affleck and Jim Jefferies are the poster children for acting like children. So as odd as it is, I need to listen to them to avoid becoming them. Even if they're completely wrong, I still need to know why. If you shut down your opposition, you may get momentary applause or you may get praise for winning that particular argument, but what you lose is perspective. And that's a loss that is way too costly for me. To me, to maintain perspective, an hour of hate watching a week in exchange is actually quite a bargain. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Okay, bye.